Welcome back, everyone. If you could please like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. It might also help, so that YouTube serves this video up to more people as well. And if you sign up for the bell, you'll get notifications to my content. I think everybody knows this, but everyone on YouTube says this, so I feel like I should. I don't know. Let's go ahead and talk about today's topic. So today's topic is how do shutter speeds affect your images in the studio? And in reality, it's sort of a trick question because most of the time they don't. So I post my XF data on Instagram a lot, and people will say to me, why are you shooting at a 1/125th of a second instead of a 1/200th of a second, your sync speed? And the answer most of the time is, I don't know. I just set the dial there that day and left it there because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any impact on the photos. The reason why is that most of the time when I'm using flash in the studio, I'm overpowering the light by so much that the ambient light, the light in the room, isn't having an impact on my photos. So a lot of times I'm shooting at f8. And let's say the ambient light in the room at the same, shutter speed and ISO combination would be 1.4. That's how I would make a proper exposure. So let's determine what the difference is now between f8 and 1.4. So if I stop down from f8, the next stop is 5.6, then 4, then 2.8, then 2, then 1.4. So the difference between f8 and 1.4, our ambient exposure and our flash exposure, is 5 f-stops. And let's say that could be at a 1/100th of a second at ISO 100 at both. It doesn't really matter. Just know that the difference a lot of times for me is about 5 stops. And if you took a picture at f8 with flash, and then you turned the flash off and you took another picture at f8, and the ambient f-stop, the ambient light was so low that your f-stop should have been 1.4, then that 5-stop difference is going to mean that your picture without flash is going to be blank. In fact, you need to get down below about a 3-stop difference before that ambient light starts to have an impact on your pictures. If you go down and maybe you're at a 1-stop difference, then you could get motion blur for sure between the ambient light in the room and your flash. This used to be something I would do all the time when I shot weddings. Thankfully, I don't shoot weddings anymore, but just know that most of the time in the studio, I'm so greatly overpowering the ambient light that it doesn't matter. And as long as there's a 3-stop difference, it doesn't matter if you shoot at 1/30th or 1/200th, it's all basically the same. And so to go one step further, and that 1/30th or 1/200th thing, that matters as long as there is a 5-stop difference between your flash exposure and the ambient light exposure. So that part is key. So if you're shooting at 1/100th of a second at f8 at ISO 100 and the ambient exposure is 1/100th of a second at f1.4 at ISO 100, then that's a 5-stop difference. I just want to sort of drive that home. Now, some people think that the shutter speed in the studio determines how frozen something is. Well, that's not normally true. So your light comes out of your flash very quickly. If this is brightness and this is time, it comes out very brightly, very quickly, and then it trails off over time. And the amount of time that it takes for that light to come out is known as the flash duration, the amount of time the flash is durating, I guess, right? So you can manipulate the power settings of your light so that it's higher or lower, and that'll determine whether or not the flash duration is very long, and this could cause blur if you've got a moving subject, or it could be shorter, and that could freeze a moving subject like a dancer. Just know that I have a video which you can watch, which talks all about flash duration and freezing a dancer in the studio, and I think it would be quite helpful, so I will definitely link to it. So if you enjoy learning from me in these videos, you probably would also enjoy learning from me on my members-only website, the Academy with John Gress. On the Academy, members will get access to longer format tutorials than what you'll find here on YouTube. They'll also get access to 2 live monthly Q&A and critique sessions, discounts on in-person workshops, and access to a members-only Facebook group. So for more information and to sign up for a 3-day free trial, just go to johngress.com/academy. It can be completely different when you're on location. So when I'm shooting outdoors and I'm adding flash to the ambient light, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what f-stop I want to shoot at, because I'm going to decide how much of my background I want to be in focus, how much depth of field I want. So almost all of the time lately, I wanted it to be bokeh-licious, and I'm using a Canon 28-70 f2, and I shoot it at f2. The next decision that I have to make is what is my shutter speed and ISO combination going to be to get a good shot, or to get the proper exposure in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to use 100 ISO, and I'm going to set my shutter speed to whatever it needs to be in order to get a proper exposure on the background. And then I'm going to turn the power of my light up or down until it looks right in the camera. Now, most of the time when shooting outdoors, you're going to end up using high-speed sync. And what I said a moment ago about flash duration, that's with traditional flash. That's when the light comes out of your light in one wave, it comes out really bright, and then it trails off. That's how light normally comes out of your flash tube. When you use high-speed sync, what it does is it takes the total volume of light that your light can produce in one discharge, which is this, usually with traditional flash. This is brightness, and this is time. It takes all of that volume of light, and it divides it into little pulses, and those little pulses go off as your camera is recording the image. So just know that your shutter moves across the sensor might read in a wave, and those pulses match that, roughly speaking. But that's what happens with high-speed sync. So that's how shutter speed would affect things. Now, if I were trying to shoot an environmental portrait indoors, it would be the same as if I was trying to shoot an environmental portrait outdoors. I would pick my shutter speed, and then I would I would pick my f-stop, and then I would pick my shutter speed and my ISO combination so that my background looked right. However, you want to be careful that you're not shooting at some shutter speed that's so long that you're going to end up with camera shake. So a good rule of thumb is if you're using a 50mm lens, then you want to shoot at 1/50th of a second or faster in order to prevent camera shake. Now, some people would say on large megapixel sensors, you want to shoot at double the millimeters. So you would want to shoot with a 50mm lens, you'd want to shoot at 1/100th of a second in order to prevent camera shake. Now, you could always use a tripod, and that's something I've got used to doing lately. But just know that a posing subject, for instance, that's moving rapidly, you might need to shoot more around a 2/50th of a second to keep them from being blurry in order to freeze them. However, if they're just sitting there like a statue, looking at you in a very creepy way, sorry, then you could be okay with a 60th of a second, or maybe even a 50th of a second. Or if they're stationary and you're shooting full body, those sorts of shutter speeds will work, but it's definitely not going to work on some 3-year-old that won't sit still. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to be at a much higher shutter speed, let's say a 200th, your sync speed usually, or you might even need to go into high-speed sync in order to freeze that child moving. Or you might want to use flash duration, and go ahead and definitely watch that video about flash duration in order to freeze that moving thing, whether it be a 3-year-old or a 23-year-old dancer. So anyway, I hope that all helped and made sense. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. And as always, stay safe, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.